Hey there guys, this is DMO73 bringing you another round of commentary here for round 3 of Caturday. As I said, we skipped round 2, we're going straight to round 3. So we have Chris Durand on the left and David Salazar on the right. Chris has rolled a 6 to David's 10, so David's probably going to be going first. David is playing a red, green, black Abdul Vampire control, I think it seems. I don't know if it's quite control or more mid-range. And then as always, Chris is playing the odd Grimm Aggro on the left. So yeah, we'll have to see how this works. Abdul is a very hard matchup for Grimm, regardless of what kind of Abdul it is. But with it not being the full control, we'll see if odd Grimm has the chance to do what it needs to do. So let's just go ahead. Yeah, so David's gonna be getting started, hits that Scorched Bales off the top and has to pass turn. That Hearth's Core for Durand's, so access to red and blue, both the two colors he needs. Quickly throws out a Tinkerbell. In the untap phase, he's gonna drop a quick Thunder to get rid of that Tinkerbell in the draw phase to be able to just use that mana for free. He spends for a Laura, the Speaker, to grab another Laura. This has been a common thing that I've seen a lot of vampire players do recently. Rather than just search for Camilla, they just search for another Laura to be able to put another presence on board turn 3 while also getting a search. It's a really, really good play, I think, optimizing that vampire play. Is going to, he's tapped one blue, but I don't think he's quite sure whether or not he wants to, whatever he's trying to do. Play a quick Cheshire Cat, get a couple draws. Looks like a Dreams of Wonderland and a Hunter goes into his hand, and he sets that Dreams of Wonderland back on top. Then he attempts to try to swing in with a Hunter and Black Forest and quickly trades with the Laura. So as I said, yep, that vampire play of just playing a second Laura, searching Laura for Laura, and then using the Laura on turn 2 to grab that Carmilla, the Queen of the Vamps. Yep, very good progression. Make sure that vampire players always have a creature to be able to play during turn 3, which sometimes based on the design of the deck, they can't always have. Especially if they're a control-heavy, spell-heavy deck. And now he has access to one black-red to be able to make spells happen if he needs to during Durand's turn. See a Blazer in Durand's hand, and a heavy spell lineup. This is a problem position for him to be playing because a lot of his small drops are easy Thunder bait and trade with that Laura. So it's going to be difficult for him to get in that extra damage, and the longer he waits, the more he's going to have to deal with it. So he attempts to block with the Laura, and then quickly takes a Thunder from Durand. Good play, very good play, and then gets that 300 damage in against David. So he was able to bait out the Laura block and get that off board and start to chip in that damage. Still a problem in the fact that his opponent has that red on board, but he assumes that the Thunder's not there because he didn't use it to stop the Hunter. So he's now going to have to deal with the fact that we're getting to 4 turns for Vamps, which just means that we can start seeing Lauras, we can start seeing, or Carmillas, we can start seeing a lot of multiple of things like Stony to Death or Flames of the Outer World. So in the mana race right now, because of those quick trades at the beginning, Chris is in a really tough spot. I think as it stands right now, David's just deciding which avenue he wants to go. If you look at his hand, it looks like he's very heavy spell lineup. So he does play all 4 to play that Carmilla, kick the March Hare off the board really quickly. Puts him in kind of risky play, especially based on what we know Odd Grimm can do. We'll have to see exactly how this is going to work. Ah, yes. Pays the 4 to play Etna and get the One Awakening to lock down that Laura, pretty much the ideal play, because if you use Dreams of Wonderland to try and bounce it or anything like that, he's essentially just refilling David for another free kill. So hitting it with Etna is a really good idea. Yep, and there's that second Carmilla. As I said, this is getting to the point where he's going to be able to start throwing out those hard removal options and be able to maintain board presence pretty solidly. Putting Chris in a pretty tough spot, especially since it seems like he has a handful of spells, but mostly lots of Dreams of Wonderland. So that's gonna make bouncing things pretty dangerous, since the thing he has to bounce is Carmilla. So yeah, I think I see 3 Dreams of Wonderland and and then the Blazer, which is now out. So he quickly blocks with Carm. So the good thing is, now that that Blazer's hit board, it's never quite dead, which will be helpful for Durand to be able to kind of reestablish. Unfortunately, this leaves him very much open to not having any kind of responses. So we'll have to see. Does that quick 300 more damage to David? So as it stands right now, free promos getting handed out. Gamers Gauntlet was handing out free promos during the event to like raffle them off, and it looks like our feature match here got some promos. Just random cards on the field. One of the things that's interesting to note is the fact that this Abdul deck seems to be running nothing but dual stones. Puts him in a very risky play to potentially, if he's not careful, because Durand, I don't think he mains them, but there have been some Grimm players, myself included, who have mained Split Heaven and Earth to catch people like this off guard, and as David keeps trying to ramp to get those cards out, be able to make those spell plays, he could quickly overextend to a point where Split Heaven and Earth can just end the game. So we've got that J activate out, which at this point Chris pretty much has a handful of spells, but David doesn't know that. So doing the Abdul was not necessarily the most ideal. But he does do this play, which is very interesting. He turns off Blazer's effect for the turn and then hits him with a stoning to death. That is the one way that you can get rid of Blazer, because otherwise Blazer just removes himself from game and then can be replayed. At this point, it seems like Chris is debating whether or not to block with Cheshire Cat, and he decides to go ahead and do that. He wants to keep that Hunter on board, just to be able to put pressure on if he needs to, if he happens to draw into, he might have the Thunders in his hand to be able to quickly deal with that Abdul. He wants to be able to get that damage in. So having a Hunter is pretty important. I mean, Cheshire's there to get those free blocks, as well as potentially shuffle up Durand's deck and let him draw into something that he wanted. I didn't see what he drew into there. Oh, a Tinkerbell. That is not... Looks like he has a March Hare in there as well. Attempts to play the March Hare. Tinkerbell at this point in time is essentially dead against Abdul, because all he has to do is use Abdul's ability to negate the effect of Tinkerbell, and then Tinkerbell will just immediately die. That being said, all of the Enter effects are also a problem, because Abdul turns those off, but it would be possible to grab something, say like a Glinda, to be able to control the spells, or just a Hunter. Oh, he grabs another March Hare. He wants to be able to put that damage on board. Doesn't necessarily worry about the fact that Abdul is there, because March Hare is essentially a free monster, because if he turns it off with Abdul, then he doesn't have to worry about his odd even hits. Plus he's just a 500 beater. It's a very, very good card. David decides to go for a stone, probably because he's feeling very confident in his ability to handle whatever Chris can throw at him, which I wouldn't lie, staring at a board of six up dual stones, full hands, and the field that Durand has, I would feel just as confident. But it'll be interesting to see how he decides to take it from here, whether or not he tries to establish a board presence now, or just play it passive and wait to see what Durand does. So he decides to play the more passive route, which I think was the better option here. It puts him in a place where he can try to bait out Chris's plays without having to worry about tapping down, essentially, or running out of mana. I mean, 6 mana up during your opponent's turn with a handful of spells. That's really good for the position that he's in. I saw a Cake Zone, I saw Flames of the Outer World, I saw a lot of stuff. So unfortunately, that Oz effect is not going to trigger because of Abdul, but it does mean that we're going to be able to get another body on board for Durand. So he's going to attempt to block. I don't necessarily know why Durand didn't just go ahead and try and bounce that. It looks like he has a Dreams of Wonderland in his hand. Maybe he's thinking about using them as more of a protecting kind of sense. We see a quick stoning to death. Dreams of Wonderland to bounce it back. We know that the top card, as he has revealed there, is that Dreams of Wonderland, so odd cards are going to go through. That was a clever play, bouncing Hunter back so that he can quickly just hit him with another 300. But then we see the cancel spell. Z's the ancient magic, so Hunter's never going to be able to get back on board. He's going to try and swing in, uses that last bit of mana to just Flames of Outer World against Durand. Chris's Flames of Outer World is unchaseable, so it's a free 800 damage that's going to go through, so that March here never stood a chance. All in all, I think that both players played that turn as best as they could. David just had all the cards that he needed to really make it happen. So we see a Mephistopheles coming on board, and with Abdul, there's almost no downside to playing Mephistopheles because he can turn off that sacrifice effect. He's going to quickly hit in for a full 1800 damage against Chris. Chris is debating whether or not to try to block, I think. He just decides to go on to the next game. He knows that at that point it's going to be hard for him to catch up, especially with a small hand in the winter effects. So here we go, going into game 2. Chris Durand is going to be going first. He wants to be able to try to get in that damage against an Abdul player. He wants to try to get in that damage as fast as possible. So I'm expecting a lot of Hunters in Black Forest, possibly sided into some more Glinda, probably sided into some Split Heavens and Earths. Abdul has a pretty strong matchup against Grimm, so I don't really necessarily know what David could have sided into. I don't have his list in front of me. I would think any kind of maybe cheap removal, like 1-drops that can serve to slow Chris down, could be something. We could see something like Yellow Sign, Slippers of Cinderella, and Bind of Gravity, as you saw in the hand. Yeah, that's what I thought. Bind of Gravity, just a quick 1-drop spell. Ooh, that standby card, Death Sentence from the Queen, that could be very, very useful in this matchup. Forcing Chris to sacrifice one of his creatures. So yeah, here we go. We have that quick, yep, there we go. Like I said, those Binds of Gravity, the quick removal is just gonna immediately lock down forever that Martyr, unless he can form some removal or bounce it back to his hand. And unfortunately, Grimm Aggro doesn't have any kind of addition removal typically, so that's gonna be a very dangerous card for him to have to deal with. See that Hunter in Black Forest, and see a second one, so we're gonna get that quick 600 damage in. So while Martyr wasn't able to get through, we did see some damage from Hunter in Black Forest. Oh, we see 2 more Binds of Gravity in the hand of David. I don't necessarily know. He does go ahead and play both of them. At this point, I don't really know if those were the best uses of Bind of Gravity for those tiny drops. I mean, yes, in the fact that he's now turned off all that aggressive play, but in the sense that now all of Chris's bigger creatures are not really going to have to worry about those binds. So, you know, Oz's are going to be able to swing more often. Blazer's pretty much free. Etna, don't have to worry about Etna as well. So would I have done that? Probably not. I would have probably even just set that Death Sentence from the Queen that you see there in his hand to force him to kill one of the hunters when the other hunter attacks. Just permanently remove those and then save those Binds of Gravity for later. Especially since Chris does have access to Dreams of Wonderland, a 1-drop spell that can quickly let him bounce that back to hand. But it is what it is. I did see a split Heaven and Earth when Chris was searching through his deck, so expect to see that later this game. A quick stoning to death on Oz. Well, Chris is tapped out. Making sure he can't bounce it back, keep it alive. It's fairly solid play. Another Hunter in Black Forest. And a Glinda to be able to cancel some spells later on. So a quick 300 damage to David, putting him down to 31. So Chris is still at 40 and David is at 31. At this point, I don't think there's really any need to J-activate Abdul. He wants to get that higher mana, especially with that Glinda on board. But he goes ahead and does it. I don't really know if that was the best play. I feel like trying to get higher in mana, especially dealing with that Glinda, would have been the better option because of the fact that he'll be able to cancel some spells with Glinda. But we'll have to see what happens. So we see that Death Sentence from the Queen did get set, so expect to see that kind of coming into play. And there's Blazer, good old Blazer. Attempts to swing in with that 1100 damage. He's going to respond to the declaration of the attack by blinking Glinda, turning off that spell cancel essentially, and then flipping the Death Sentence from the Queen. Essentially just means that Chris is going to have to get rid of one of his other creatures, so he's going to just waste the Bind of Gravity. Again, this is one of the situations why I said Bind of Gravity, playing all those Bind of Gravity so fast weren't such a good idea, because Death Sentence from the Queen, Chris gets to choose, so he just has free targets to just sacrifice. So David chooses not to block, so that's 1100 damage going through. So we have 40 life for Chris and 20 life for David. So puts David in kind of a bad position now that that Blazer's on board. He can try and remove it because he can blink the ability with Abdul. but it's going to be hard for him to also be able to do that and be able to deal with whatever Chris can play against him next turn. He's essentially probably going to have to tap out in order to be able to deal with that Blazer. Calls that extra stone. And the other thing is, David has not seen any red. This has been all black and green, which is not ideal. His heavy spells his quick spells do a lot of green, or do a lot of red. And we do see that double blink with Abdul to hit the stoning to death, to deal with the Blazer. So we get that 5th stone for Durand. See a Blazer. I see some Dreams of Wonderland. Go ahead and take advantage to try to get those quick pokes in. So 500 damage there. Another 300 damage. And then gonna try and do what he did before in the sense of bouncing. Should have revealed, because we don't necessarily know what that top card is. Again, there he goes. Yeah, there he reveals. We didn't technically know what that top card was the first time, so we needed to play it. And so we see that those hunters are going to come back and really try to put in that extra work here. So the Abdul. So he uses the first Abdul blink to try and stop that the swiftness of the hunter as it comes in, and then he uses the second Abdul blink to turn off Glinda so that he can play that Zeeks and cancel the spell. So very, very good kind of recovery there for David. That could have potentially gone very, very sour very, very quickly. So he has that Thunder in hand. But the thing is, he's got to hope that he gets that redstone. And there it is. So he finally has access to red. Unfortunately, there's only one red, but he does have that one Thunder in hand that can... he has 3 Thunders in hand. Oh, that is painful to see when you only have 1 red mana. Chris is debating whether or not he wants to bounce anything. I think he still has a blue stone left over, but he's just going to go ahead and let the Thunder go through. We see that standby go back down, and those 2 mana are still just sitting there. So he draws into that Hunter. We're going to probably see a very similar play, but he uses a Grimm pitch to... At this point, I would say... If I was in Chris's shoes, what would I grab? A March Hare, probably, to be able to throw on some extra damage if I needed it. Especially since anything that I throw out is probably going to get blanked. Any hunters I throw out are probably going to have their swiftness blanked anyway by the Abdul. And he could potentially try to bait out. I think he's possibly trying to bait out that Zeeks. But again, he doesn't. He sees that 2 green. So he knows that, and he knows his opponent plays Zeeks, so he wants to make sure that if he is going to be able to play that Blazer, that he will be able to get it through. Because that would very definitely close out the game. Oh, but he grabs an Oz. Interesting play, especially since Oz is not going to be able to get its Enter effect triggered. If I was just trying to grab a raw damage dealer, I might have grabbed an Etna. But, well, maybe Chris has a trick up his sleeve to try to make it so he can take out that Abdul this turn. Let's see. Hit that 6th stone. Durand is sitting at 6, so we hit the 300. Another death sentence with his queen to get rid of that March Hare, essentially forcing his opponent to take that 300 damage. He plays the Oz. I think at this point he's probably hoping to try and maybe bait out whatever is in his opponent's hand. David is drawn into a, looks like a Zeke's, a Zeke's, a Stoning, and a Thunder. He knows he's going to be able to do a quick board wipe all the way around, so he uses the Stoning during the draw step to deal with the Oz. Gets that untap. And at this point, with only 2 cards in hand and no way to draw, I would almost try and probably just quickly do a Thunder to eliminate that Hunter, or just swing in with Abdul and leave the Thunder up for later. So he attacks Durand, I believe, and then passes for turn. So Durand takes 1,000 damage from the Abdul. Can't quite tell what I see in there. I see a Grimm the Avenger. Oh, a Grimm the Avenger. There's the Blazer. Again, yeah, I knew that the Blazer is not really doing much for Durand, unfortunately. He does play the Grimm. Not going to get any kind of effect off of it because of Abdul, but at least it's another creature for him to be able to place onto board. And then he passes. Very interesting. He uses a quick Grubalesta effect to give minus 300 to minus 300 to the Grimm. I don't really know what he was doing there. That was kind of weird, but all I know is there was a board wipe. There was a board wipe that happened, and then another quick 1,000 damage to Durand. At this point in time, he knows his opponent has 1 card up. He's going to try and just play Split Heaven and Earth and just hope that his opponent doesn't have a response. He's going to deal 300 damage to both players for each number of special stones, which is going to be 1,500 damage to David. So Chris is going to take that one. So a lucky top deck for Chris at the very end there. Going to game 3. If I'm the Abdul player being in the play here, things to note for the next game, I think, would be to not make use of those Binds of Gravity so early, because I just think that those could have been better saved, and in the end, they actually ended up almost making some of David's plays worthless with the death sentence from the Queen, because he was able to just banish the ones that had already been locked down by Bind of Gravity. So we see that Cheshire Cat coming out from Chris Durand, after a pass from David, trying into quite what he drew into. But now we're at, you get that red mana early, so there's that death sentence from the queen. Yep, David's picked up a little bit faster about exactly what he needs to be doing with that death sentence, not locking down when he doesn't need to. Do I see a split heaven and earth for Durand, Chris? That means that we're gonna have some potential really good plays in order to be able to finish the game off if things try to go too long. Already having that in hand is a secure place to be. And so we see the Hunter in Black Forest come out. That's going to try and do that extra damage. The Death Sentence from the Queen comes up, and we get a free shuffle back into the Cheshire Cat. So a really good way to play around that Death Sentence, because, you know, sets a card that he doesn't really want right now on top of his deck, swings in with the Hunter, and then he's able to just sacrifice one of the Cheshire Cats to be able to put it back in the deck. That puts David down to 37, while Chris sits at 40. See that Laura, so we see those vampires. We didn't see hardly any of those in game 1, or in game 2. So it's good to kind of, maybe he sided out of the vampire engine in game 2. I doubt it, but we'll have to see. So we have, it's turn 3, so Laura coming out, trying to get that Carmilla next turn is pretty standard, and then a quick Thunder on the Hunter in Black Forest to turn him off. So Durand's in a spot right now where he knows there's a Carmilla coming out next turn that he's going to have to deal with. And he needs to be able to handle that option. Or be prepared to lose whatever is going to come out this turn in terms of creature. Looks like he has double Thunder in hand. Ooh, and 2 Split Heavens and Earths. So he's got a lot of options for if Abdul comes out. I see a Glinda, a Blazer, if I was Chris in this position, I'd probably just pass and wait to see what my opponent does in terms of possibly just trying to commit that Carmilla, making him waste it, and then just burn it for double Thunder, or if he tries to take advantage of the situation with and get a free jam to activate with Abdul, then he can quickly double Thunder and burn it, because he's gonna have to spend almost all of his mana at this point to make that play possible. So ideally, I mean, I think he's still gonna have 2 mana up. That would be what my goal would be. I think would be to just hold on to those double Thunders. To be able to answer whatever whatever David's gonna throw out next turn, but he does decide to grab that Cheshire Cat, which can be really good because he needs to draw into some stuff potentially, and it would make Carmilla essentially worthless because they can't be targeted by anything. He does go ahead and play that Cheshire Cat to draw into some new cards. See if that helps. Helps him and all. Looks like he drew into another Split Heaven and Earth. So now we have, it looks like we have 3 Split Heavens. Wow, that is gonna quickly make things not good for David if he's not careful. And we haven't really seen a lot of Cake Zones, spell cancels from David, almost anywhere in this deck. So Split Heaven and Earth could be what wins it, which just, it happens. Especially now that we're sitting at 4 mana. 3 Split Heavens and Earth would be 3,600, coupled that with a free Thunder, and Chris is well within lanes to have game. Yep, that's 3 Split Heavens and Earths and a Thunder in his hand. So he takes the free 300 damage from the Laura attack, and then moves into his turn. We only see 1 green, so I think that right now, again, just that idea of just passing, especially with double Thunder up, knowing that there's going to be a Laura, Does that quick 500 damage. Yep. To David, putting him down to 32. Well within range to be able to make something happen. And then throws out the other Thunder as well. This is one of the things that puts David down to 27. This is one of the things that is probably one of Grimm's best bets against Abdul, especially the Aggro matchup, is just to burn them, because we lose all the enter effects. They can blank out the Tinkerbells. They can blank out a lot of the swiftness effects. It's just hard. It's a very hard matchup. And so a quick split Heaven and Earth. Oh, there is the Cake Zone. We did see the 1. So 1 is going to whiff. But Chris is okay with that because he knows that he's got 2 more in his hand. So baiting out that Cake Zone now is probably a good idea. Ooh, drew into another Cake Zone. We'll have to see, but the thing is, we gotta wonder if David is thinking that he's gonna see another split Heaven and Earth in the next turn. So I see a Bite of Gravity, I see 2 Carmillas, a Thunder, a Zeeks, and a Absolute Cake Zone in David's hand. Very solid hand for David to be having right now. But this is dangerous territory. If he gets hit with even 2 split Heavens, he's gonna be in a problem. So he knows that that Blazer is gonna be able to go through. He knows that Zeeks isn't gonna be possible because there's no double green. So a very, very good play from Durand to get that Blazer out right now. Essentially putting David in a spot where he has to decide whether or not to try and tap for mana or get the J activate and try and kill that Blazer right now. Which he can, thanks to Carmilla, but that'll leave him tapped out, and he is going to go for that play. He's going to play the Carm to kill that Blazer after its ability's been turned off. Unfortunately, what he doesn't know is now that he's tapped out, he's going to easily get double split Heaven and Earth, which is both of them are going to do 1500 damage and end the game. So well played game from both sides. Unfortunately, just because of that lack of green in game 3, David was just put in a point where he had to deal with Blazer or he had to deal with split. Made the decision to try to deal with the Blazer and then just got hit with the split afterwards. So yeah, Chris Durand takes that against David Salazar 2-1. Tune in again tomorrow, guys, when we're going to be moving on to the next round of the game, looking at the next deck. As always, let us know what you thought of the matchup, what you thought of what you saw, and go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, guys, this is DMO73 signing off.